morning and welcome everyone. I'll now call the regular council meeting of Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021 to order. The meeting is now open to statements of no more than 5 members of the public, no more than 2 minutes in length each. Okay, I'll move to item 3.1. Are there any late additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's one late addition on the orange sheet in front of you, NDIT 2022 Business Facade Improvement Program. This will be added to the agenda as item 11.5.
Any further late additions or deletions?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Need someone to move that the November 2nd, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as amended, Councillor Weed, second Councillor Leach. Call the question, those in favor? Carried. Item 6.1, someone to move that the October 5th, 2021 regular council meeting minutes be adopted as presented, and number 2, that the October 26th, 2021 special council meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Councillor Weed, second Councillor Hoppo. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Move to item 9. Any councillor want to remove one of the 2 items of correspondence? Hearing none, I need someone to move that the correspondence included in the information reported dated October 26th, 2021 be received for information. Councillor Weed, second Councillor Leach. Any further discussion? Okay, none. Call the question. Those in favor? Carried. We'll move to item 10.1, Lillooet Community Fund Committee recommendation. Ms. G.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. You have before you here a staff report regarding the Lillooet Community Fund Committee recommendations. It is brought forward on behalf of the Lillooet Community Fund Committee. The committee grants twice a year, spring and fall. This committee is a endowment fund committee in which the committee members receive applications in spring and fall, and they consider whether the applications by local area nonprofit groups focus on social, cultural, artistic, education, and recreational activities, fostering a positive environment in our community. This fund was established in 2007. The funding they are permitted to allocate is up to $1,000. This needs to be up to 50% of the project cost for the approved projects. With respect to the particular applications received for the fall 2021, there was 3 applications received, and you will see before you 3 resolutions. These are resolutions brought forward from the committee as recommendations. Council makes decisions regarding the conference of these funds. The first applicant is Skate Lillooet. They applied for the establishment of an equipment rental skate bank, and they requested an amount of $1,000. The second applicant was the Better Living Center for the food pantry project, and they are requesting an amount of $1,000 as well. In your report here, there is a discussion about this particular application. Staff believe it's important to bring to your attention some of the considerations that the committee discussed at their meeting on October 27th. The food pantry bag lunches to go project that was approved for fall 2020 is in large large part very similar to the fall 2021 application. The eligibility guidelines for this particular fund seek to have new projects. They also seek to have projects that have a distinct start and finish as opposed to operating costs. However, the committee did factor in these considerations, and they chose to, by consensus, support this application, in part because the pandemic has had a severe impact on many residents in Lillooet, and the bagged food lunches and the food pantry project, which is foreseen to be ongoing until the pressures of the pandemic subside, and is not typically part of the Better Living Center's operations, has been well received by the community and is seen as very helpful and supportive to the community. And moving on to the third application that was received, this was from Lillooet Learning Community Society, also known as Lillooet Learns, and this is for a project called the Indigenous Court Name and Logo Project, and they are requesting $500. So I would also like to point out, as attachment 1 to this report, is the funds in the account balance. They are $3,893.12, and so the funds in the account would cover all 3 projects should council choose to support them, and I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Ms. G. Any questions from council? I'm gonna table them one at a time, in case there is discussion that comes up. Somebody move that, as recommended by the Lillooet Community Fund Committee, the grant application submitted by Skate Lillooet for the establishment of an equipment rental skate bank be approved for the requested amount of $1,000. Who moves? Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Weed. Any discussion? None. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Number 2. I need someone to move the recommended by the Lillooet Community Fund Committee, the grant application submitted by the Better Living Center for the food pantry project be approved for the requested amount of $1,000. Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Weed. Any further discussions? None. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried. And lastly, I need someone to move that the recommended by the Lillooet Community Fund Committee, the grant application submitted by the Lillooet Learning Community Society for the Indigenous Court Name and Logo Project be approved for the requested amount of $500. Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Weed. Any further discussion? I'll call that question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Ms. Reed. We'll move to item 11. 11.1, land use concurrence telecommunications installation at 103 Main Street.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have received a request for land use concurrence from TELUS. We're proposing the construction of a 32-meter tall monopole tower on privately owned property at 103 Main Street within an approximately 225 square meter compound. The tower will be visible from surrounding areas, which is why TELUS has proposed a monopole over a lattice or guide tower. Monopoles having less complexity in their design are generally considered to have the least overall visual impact. The land was chosen as it was believed by the property owner and TELUS that it was zoned industrial, which it was until council split zoned the property in 2019 to make the upper portion rural residential in anticipation of a subdivision. However, as the subdivision has failed to materialize, should council support the tower, staff would undertake to return the property to the industrial zone. Regardless, the utility use, which includes telecom infrastructure, is permitted in all zones. In the absence of a district process for considering towers, TELUS undertook their own public consultation process in accordance with the federally approved Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada consultation process, which includes notifying any property owners within a radius of 3 times the proposed tower height, placing a notice in the local paper. These notices were in the August 11th and 18th edition of the Bridge River News, and requesting land use concurrence from the relevant land use authority, in this case, the District of Lillooet. The agent for TELUS has also provided an image of an installed monopole in Gold River, as well as a compound clad in hardyboard. TELUS provided a consultation summary which staff have reviewed and agreed with TELUS's assessment that out of 38 responses, 19 were in support and 19 were in opposition. Reasons for opposition include 15 citing opposition due to visual impact and appearance, 11 to do with health and well-being, 9 concerned about the location and that other options have not been considered, 8 citing radiation-based health concerns, 4 regarding the impact to adjacent businesses, specifically the proposed brewery, 3 indicating sufficient connectivity in the community already, 2 declaring property values will be affected, and 1 concerned that there is no compensation, probably around the perceived reduction of property values, and 1 having a desire for a public meeting or public hearing. Reasons for support include 14 being satisfied with the appearance, 8 desiring improved cell service, 2 indicating that the land is appropriate, and 1 saying it didn't affect them one way or the other. There were also 3 respondents that indicated support but did express concern over the appearance. Staff did attempt to break down the responses into areas. However, most residents didn't include their civic address, so the breakdown isn't particularly representative. The policy piece is also split about 50-50, with the official community plan calling for a livable community, which includes access to telecommunications infrastructure, as well as public safety features, like our emergency notification system, relying heavily on cellular and data services. The OCP policy here is to provide and maintain protective service levels in accordance with the needs of the community. Alternatively, the official community plan, which was the 2008 plan at the time that this application was made, indicated that a primary objective is to develop and maintain an aesthetically appealing environment. Staff concur that a 32-meter monopole will have a visual impact on the gateway to the Hop Farm neighborhood, as well as from the lower portions of Main Street, specifically the industrial and commercial areas at the north end of town. Should council wish to give land use concurrence to the project, staff would recommend making, as a condition of approval, that the compound be appropriately screened, and that has been reflected in option 1 of the report. Staff have provided 2 optional resolutions to council. Option 1 is if council wishes to support the proposal. Option 2 is if council would like to withhold concurrence. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any questions, comments from council? Councillor Hopple?
Thank you, through the mayor. I have a lot of questions, so I'll just start. The first one is that 103 Main Street starts at the what we used to call the Mugs and Jugs, and it goes down, it goes up the hillside, and then levels off on the top on Mohawk Road. So the cell tower is destined to go at the top. Is there any way it could go at the bottom?
I actually did ask them that. I believe there were some issues with the proximity of the hydro right-of-way. The BC hydro right-of-way, you can't put something underneath of that.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to wait with my questions
Yeah,
and wait everybody else?
Go ahead.
No? Okay. On page 26, it says on the option 1, the 1, 2, 3, 4th, and that as a condition of the installation, the district requires low water indigenous plants to be established and maintained around the perimeter of the compound. Who maintains that?
That would be up to TELUS to explain to us how that would work. That would be a condition of our acceptance.
So that would not be the district in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and can you tell me what the radius is for a communication tower? Like how far does it
The actual service or how far the notification radius is?
The actual service, because there is one over across the river. So, and this one would be the only other one, or would there be more coming, or?
This is the only one proposed at the time. Now, the way it was explained to me is that as data services increase, the actual data signal does not travel as far as a radio signal for voice communications does. So in order to get faster data signal, the towers actually need to be closer to the end user.
Okay.
So they're placing towers more often nowadays in populated areas because of the higher use of data. While the tower across the way does provide mostly sufficient coverage for the voice communications over the cellular network, people are having a hard time with the LTE and the 5G data connections because of the distance it has to travel.
Do you happen to know the radius?
I
how
don't,
far it
I'm
is?
sorry,
Okay,
no.
alright, that's good, thanks.
Okay. Counselor Weed?
Through the mayor, is there any history on, how did this site get to be delegated where it would be, like, did TELUS check out any other areas or any other sites, or?
I believe TELUS also looked at the property that the proposed brewery is going on. They were approaching private property owners that had land within the municipal boundaries in order to provide the stronger data service. So TELUS set out a list of criteria and then gave it to their third-party consultant who operated this consultation process. They went out and started looking for feasible pieces of land by contacting private property owners, and this was conceivably one of the only ones that accepted.
Okay. It's probably none of my business, but do you get paid to put a tower on your property? I'm just,
I believe that there is some sort of rent.
Compensation?
Thank you. Rent for that, compensation for that. I'm not privy to what that is. That's a private agreement between the TELUS and the property owner.
okay, I'm sure, I just wasn't, yeah, okay, thank you.
Counselor Leach?
So Councillor Hopful mentioned that we have a cell tower across the river. Can you confirm, so, cause as we pull into the district office, there is a tower of some sort in the back district parking lot. Can you confirm if that is for signals, is it for cell towers, is it like what?
I believe that that is actually LitNet infrastructure. Yes.
Okay,
LitNet
and is that
infrastructure.
similar to what this tower would be providing, only with a different company?
I don't believe the LitNet provides cellular service. I mean, it's obviously transmitting something.
Okay.
It is not nearly as tall as this one will be, and it is lattice design, not the monopole design that is being proposed.
Okay, and then, although I don't think anyone, whether staff or anyone here can confirm, I think there's also a similar signal, structure on the, old railway station as well, for their signal system as well. So I just want, I guess, I'm bringing this up so the public is aware that there are already signal systems in the community. This one just happens to be a little larger. And, all right.
Thank you. Counselor Weed?
Through the mayor, just made me think, can they not share a tower? Like, do none of, like you're saying, one is for LitNet, TELUS, I'm sure there's Shaw, Rogers, whatever, does it ever come into play where they share an existing tower that's already there?
Some telecommunications do enter into agreements with each other to put their own dishes on other people's towers. I believe what they're trying to solve here is, again, that proximity piece for the increased data strength between the tower and the end user. There are people towards the south end of town that get very good data signal from the tower over on the East Lillooet side. But apparently as you get closer up north past the hot farm, it gets a little less strong, the data signal that comes from that tower. So the problem they're trying to solve wouldn't be solved by sharing a tower, because it's about the location, not about the transmitter.
And if I can follow up, is this specifically for cell service, or is this cell service and internet service? Or just totally cell service?
Well, it's cell service and then the data service as well. Yeah, so they do run on different frequencies. But when I say internet service, I mean cellular data.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leach?
Yes, I also just wanted to bring to light, if council recalls, when we were at UBCM in 2018, UBCM voted strongly in favor of increasing cell service, especially in rural and remote communities. Mayor Barbara Robin had a very compelling talk on that there, and if I'm connecting the dots correctly, NDIT is also, we've talked about this at the NDIT meetings, and how the government, there was a, I just can't bring it to mind, I'm sorry, I'm unprepared. I would like to say I believe this is part of all of the pushback from municipalities originally to get these cell towers going.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions, comments? Councillor Hopwell?
Should we be concerned about, I don't know, health and welfare of the people within that 500-meter radius? Like, I don't see anything that's confirmed data to back that up, but I know there's concerns about it.
The health and welfare of everyone in town should always be a concern. However, not being a medical doctor or a scientist, I can't really speak to the problems that these towers may or may not cause. All I know is that there are a lot of studies that are going on around these towers, and at this time, the regulatory bodies are still allowing them to be constructed.
Right, no confirmed data. Okay.
Anything more?
No.
I can say a few, but obviously the time that I spent in sub-Saharan Africa and South Africa, it's inundated with wireless and cellular service because they don't have the landlines that we do. So for many years, from an optic point of view, I'm pleased that it's in commercial or industrial. It gets into residential, it can do some pretty neat things. And what they do over there is that they shield it with metal palm leaves and make it look like a palm tree, even with metal dates hanging underneath it. So if necessary, if they ever come to wanting to put it in our residential area, they can make pine trees with pine cones. But in the regulatory in terms of health and safety for microwave and for cellular services being reviewed by the CRTC, I think the various agencies have to come forward to it, but I've managed to survive some pretty intense cellular service, so I'm comfortable with it as it sits right now. Any further comments, questions? Okay, we have two options, council. I'll go through the first one, table it, and if it passes, that's fine. If it doesn't, I'll mention option 2. Is that all right?
It is fine. It might be better if there was a little bit of consensus reached first, so that we don't vote down something that might have been intended to go forward.
Do you want me to lobby for a consensus before I do it?
Well, there are actually 3 options. There's the option to approve it, the option to deny it, or the option to defer it and see additional information. So if there is not a strong opinion one way or the other, that is sort of a secret option 3.
Okay, council, you got the options 1, 2, and you've heard 3. We okay to table option 1? Let's do it, right? Okay. I need someone to move that the District of Lillooet is satisfied with TELUS consultation process as outlined in ISED's default public consultation process, and that the proposed tower is a permitted use, and that a condition of the installation, the district requires that the compound is adequately screened at street level with fire-resistant materials such as hardy board in lieu of bare chain link fence that is of a color that resembles timber or other natural dark material. And that as a condition of the installation, the district requires low water indigenous plants be established and maintained around the perimeter of the compound. And further that the District of Lillooet has been consulted and concurs with the tower location at 103 Main Street, legally described as Lot A, Plan KAP 10753, District Lot 1116, Land District 23, except Plan KAP 48329. Who will so move?
Your worship, before you pass that, is there any comments from the floor from this, before you actually pass the resolution?
No, you'll have to wait until the end of the meeting. Councillor Leach moves. Who seconds? Councillor Hopple. Any further discussion on this one? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Thank you. We'll dispense with option 2, obviously. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, we'll move to 11.2, development permit DP 21-004 and DVP 21-007, 622 Main Street, mixed-use building.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before us today is development permit DP 21-004 and DVP 21-007 to consider a proposal for a 3-story, 23-unit rental tenure unit development with a net floor area of approximately 16,494 square feet of dwelling space. The proposal also includes approximately 3,147 square feet of commercial retail space. The number of CRUs to be determined at a later date by tenant improvement. The proposal is to include a rooftop patio, green parking area, and landscaped perimeter. The building is designed by architect Laszlo Zold, who has provided his design rationale, which has been included in the council agenda package. The OCP sets guidelines for downtown that states that council should consider function, form, and sustainability when considering downtown projects. The building surface offers a variety of colors, textures, and landscaping which contribute to an overall experience of moving between spaces. The public-private interface is already well defined from the Main Street frontage, and the proposed 0 lot line setback request will allow for awning overhang onto the sidewalk, providing both rain and sun protection, which will merge the interface in an organic interaction that would not be as fluid as the prescribed 6-meter setback in the zoning bylaw. The developer has also opted for a grass paver parking lot, which will help to reduce the heat in the summer and provide the residential units with a more pleasing parking lot view than the traditional concrete jungle. This type of hard surfacing is considered acceptable under the current zoning bylaw, and a variance would not be required. The setback reduction proposed will allow the development to utilize the lot in the most efficient way by providing sufficient parking for the residential uses at the proposed 1.25 stalls per unit, with a staff-supported reduction to the parking for commercial uses from 11 spots to 8 spots. The predominant feature of this facade is its modern aesthetic and fire-smart construction. What looks like orange on the top there is actually an aluminum siding that is made to mimic the look of wood. The OCP guidelines do ask that the Main Street development promotes historical character with pre-1920 design themes. However, this level of design requirement has not been consistently enforced and will stifle development rather than support it. The north part of the building will unfortunately be a monolithic wall. These firewalls are a requirement of the BC Building Code. The intent is that another building will be constructed up to the adjoining property line with their own firewall. In the interim, staff are recommending that council designate these walls as mural walls should the owner wish to consider commissioning art for the size of the building. The north wall is not too concerning as it will be facing away from the entrance to town, so the gateway aspect shouldn't be too negatively affected. The specific variance requests are as follows. To increase the permitted height from 12 meters to 16 meters to the highest projection. And to be clear, this will not allow the developer to change their plans significantly from what you see here. They will not be able to take and put another floor above what you see here to hit that 16-meter mark. The 16 meters is up to the elevator shaft on this point, and we're going to the highest portion so that there's absolute clarity, but they cannot come back and extend this portion up any higher than it is. It has to be significantly the same as what is before you and in the development permit. There may be slight changes for BC Building Code, such as another exit on this side, which won't be any higher than this, and that is for a secondary fire escape off of the roof and isn't particularly negotiable. Next is setback requirements. We have already talked about the front setback going from 6 meters, which is generally considered excessive in a commercial zone, to 0 meters, which is where many of the commercial buildings downtown are already sited. The interior side property lines, we're looking at a reduction for accessory structures. The parking area is intended to have covered parking structures, which will need to be closer to the property line, or some will be covered and others will not. As the primary building is already permitted to go to 0 lot lines, the relaxation for accessory structures will not seem to pose any greater impact than the building is already creating. And for the exact same reason, on the rear lot line, proposing a reduction from 3 meters to 1 meter so that those accessory covered parking stalls, which at this time are being proposed to have solar panels on them, can be closer to the property line as well. Parking was one of the first areas that we wanted to tackle, as reducing residential parking spots is not ideal. The developer did impressively manage to squeeze in all of the residential required parking, with only a request to minimize or reduce the commercial parking by 3 spaces. For the benefit that 23 rental units in town brings, this would be an ideal compromise. To facilitate this, we also need to not require additional widths for spots against a fence or a building. There are only spots against fences in this case. This may make getting into and out of some vehicles a little tight at times, but certainly not impossible or prohibitive. Staff are recommending that DP 21-004 and DVP 21-007 be approved. Mr. Mayor, the builder and the owner both would like to make short presentations at this time, which is appropriate. And following that, the floor should be opened to any member of the public who would like to speak in support or opposition of this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Welcome.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors, staff, and the public. So I'm really excited to be here. This was one of my COVID projects that was super frustrated. My staff couldn't get housing. I'd had several friends that had been renting places for years, and all of a sudden were looking for a new spot to live. You know, it's one of those things. We always have these things we gripe about, but we never do anything about it. And so my COVID project was doing something about it. This really comes from my heart. I was born and raised in Lillooet. I love this town, and I really want to see it move forward. And I think we can't do that if we don't have housing. This isn't going to solve all of our problems. Obviously, not everyone wants to live in an apartment, but this will, I think, facilitate some people moving out of their homes and selling them, moving into a smaller place, allowing people that are just starting out to have a safe and long-term rental accommodation. So that was the plan, and it's been a colleague of mine, Aziz, who's been working with me. He did a renovation for me in the pharmacy several years ago and does commercial buildings in Vancouver. I called him up and I was like, so what would you think about doing this project with me? And he also loves helping and giving back, and so we embarked on this process. about 9 months ago, and we're excited to be able to present this to you guys tonight, so. I'll put the floor over to Aziz.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everybody. And want to take time to thank you, Kevin, for all the help, and of course, Carmen. Just want to point out a couple things about this project. As Carmen said, when I heard about the project, I'm working from Vancouver. It's based, our company is based in Vancouver, the architects are based in Vancouver. So I asked her, I said, do you want to bring Vancouver look in here? And that's what the plan started. And a couple things that I want to say about, first of all, the way this building has been designed. It will be for example, let's start with the roof. We put fire basically resistance roof on this building. Second, we're going to put a community garden. It has a closed and open amenity. Means people can go there and have a small, like a birthday party or something, but they can always sit outside, chairs, umbrellas, and all that. And also they can do their gardening. Now the water system and the gardening and the roof rain system, if it rains, of course, we will have storage tanks and downstairs where we have our bicycle storage. The roof of the ceiling of bicycle storage is 16 foot high. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the 8 foot of that to make a storage tank, and that water will be used to basically irrigate all the pavers, the green pavers that we're going to put in the parking lot. It will cost her a lot of money, trust me. The other thing that we came up with, or which we do that in Vancouver, so I want to do it here too. We have a lot of sun here, and we wanted to use that, and our electrical engineer came up with the idea of getting all the top of the parking stalls will all be covered with a solar system. So the solar that we're gonna get, that's gonna power for the yard, also inside the units, and for the cars, we're gonna have it's gonna be potential, but every 4 cars will have 1 stall of chargers. Because we're thinking like this building is gonna stay here for another 100 years. So it's more like we're thinking of the future of the Lillooet and future of this building and the tenants who stay here. And this building is just for tenants. It will be rental property. We're not selling it. So it will be totally rental property just to help with the community as well. And it is something that will make this downtown beautiful, in my opinion. There's a lot of green spots all around the property. For safety of people, there's issues that we took in consideration. We will have concrete fencing or walls around, but that's because of fire safety for the next door neighbors. At the same time, safety of residents who live there. The gate will be closed sort of like at night. They can close. It will be all automatic gates. And other stuff, which is, in my opinion, basically, if I remember, that's almost it about this building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Hold
you.
it 1 moment, please. Is it more appropriate the public has questions before council, or vice versa?
If you have any clarifying questions for Aziz, you can go ahead and ask them now before inviting the public out.
Okay, any questions, queries, comments from council? No, I really appreciate the vision from my perspective. Hopefully looking forward that council will accept it. We'll see. Appreciate it very much. Any questions or points of clarification from the public on this particular permit? Yes.
I'm just curious about the configuration of the apartments, that like the size, one bedroom, two bedroom?
Good point. Sorry, we didn't mention that. We have actually even amount of numbers for the first floor on this building is a mix of commercial and residential. So the way we designed it is the front we have which we decide to go with 3 different businesses. It will be like, because it's a 3,700 square feet, something like that, so we're gonna split it into 1,100 square feet of business spaces. The businesses we were thinking, and we have some ideas and people who are interested, they're more boutique. Actually, the names should be there on the plan as well. There's a boutique, there's I believe a yoga studio and a pet food store or something like that.
Yeah.
We wrote it there. And then behind this one, because we split it into half, behind that, if we go to one of the plans, actually floor plans.
Oh, I don't have those.
Oh, you don't have it, it's okay. So if you guys have it, you can see at the back, we put 3 2-bedroom, basically sort of apartments. I would call that sort of like, exactly, right there. I could just do it. So this is my commercial basically area. This is the entrance to the building. What we have between the back and the front, the front and the back of the building to gain access, there's a corridor that goes basically through. So during the day, this is always open, so people who come and park for commercial, those designated commercial parkings, they can always just get access to the front and come to these commercial businesses. As far as this 3-unit goes, they have their own basically access, and we want to make these ones accessible. So in case somebody with wheelchair or something, there's no steps to these ones. So they can just, and what else we provided for this 3 units, they're 2-bedroom each, excuse me. There's 1 parking space for each one, and they have a small yard. You can't really see it here, but there's basically a front yard for each one of these. So they're almost like a townhouse type of thing. So, but they're 2-bedroom each. They're, of course, for rent. And like elderly couples or somebody can just basically take those ones. The second floor and the third floor, what we have is on each floor we have 10.
No, I don't have those.
It's okay. I believe we have 10. Yes, 10 units. So we split it into even number, like 5 2-bedrooms and 5 1-bedroom. And so we have 10 1-bedroom, 10 2-bedroom, and then 3 sort of like a townhouse, and then 3 units of commercial. And the square footage, basically, we try to use sort of like maximum commercial for 1-bedrooms, which is like about 700 square feet, and then for the bedrooms, sort of like about 900 to 1,200 square feet.
Yes, go ahead.
So you're gonna have some elevator?
Of course, yeah.
Or do you have, okay, one more question for you. Do you have kind of basement under the ground?
No, for this building, we do not have any basement.
From the ground?
No underground, and we're gonna just park everything, like our parking and everything is all outside. But yes, that is the elevator shaft right there.
One side?
Yeah, and the other side is of course the exit with the stairway, which is a fire exit. Will be all concreted for fire safety.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Taylor, you have comments?
This is fine if council wants to continue down this path. The portion of this meeting is intended to be for members of the public to come and address council to say how this development may or may not affect them, and then for council to ask questions of the developer. However, if council is comfortable with this, then by all means. In that line, though, I would mention that there was one piece of correspondence that was submitted, and it's on the green paper in front of you. I will read it out. Hello, as we are the closest neighbor to the above ambitious massive project, we do have some concerns as once it is built, there will be no changing. Number 1, street parking with 4 or more commercial outlets in front, should the district go back to angle parking, there is a lack of street parking now. Number 2, front setback from 6 meters to 0 meters. For it to fit in on Main Street, I believe there should be a setback of at least 2 meters. Number 3, maximum height from 12 meters to 16 meters. Again, will this height fit in on Main Street? Number 4, tourism. When this pandemic is over, tourism will again be one of our main industries. Our gold mining history, jade mining, are what most tourists are interested in. We believe Main Street should reflect this. We realize there's a real need for housing in Lillooet right now. We are not against development. There are so many other properties that are vacant, i.e. Lillooet Foods Building, the old corner store, the land below Murray's news office, the old forest site. Maybe there should be a bylaw where land will have to be developed in a certain length of time. Thank you, Karen Vanderwolf of KC Health and Gifts.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I'm Canvas Council, but I'm quite comfortable with the informal approach between, designer. How about the rest of you? You good? Yeah, so we're comfortable with the public asking questions of the proponents. Any further questions? Nope, hearing none. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. This is quite a mouthful, so I'm going to split it up into 2, all right? Okay. Regarding, I need someone to move that downtown development permit DP 21004 for the proposed mixed-use commercial residential development at 622 Main Street, legally described as Lot A, Lillooet District Plan EPP 111844 be issued, and that Council delegate authority to the Director of Corporate and Development Services under Section 490(5) of the Local Government Act to approve amendments to the development permit that may affect the final constructed form of the development caused by servicing requirements, fire and life safety requirements, building code requirements, or other such issues out of the developer's control that does not substantially change the form and character of the development. Who will so move? Councillor Weed, second Councillor Leach. Any further clarification required by council in this? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, to item 2. Need someone to move that the development variance permit DVP 21-007 for the proposed mixed-use commercial residential development at 622 Main Street, legally described as Lot A, Lillooet District Plan EPP 111844, to vary the following provisions in the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 number 454. Minimum number of commercial parking stalls prescribed in section 46.3 from 11 to 8. Next, to reduce the additional parking width along a fence as prescribed in section 48D from 0.3 meters to 0.0 meters. Next, to increase the maximum height in the C1 zone as prescribed in section 52.1 from 12 meters to 16 meters to the highest projection. And next, to reduce the minimum front setback in the C1 zone as prescribed in section 52.1 from 6.0 meters to 0.0 meters. And next, to reduce the minimum interior side setback for accessory structures in the C1 zone as prescribed in section 52.1 from 3 meters to 0.75 meters. And finally, to reduce the minimum rear setback for accessory structures in the C1 zone as prescribed in section 52.1 from 3 meters to 1 meter be approved. Who moves? Councillor Hopful, second Councillor Leach. Any further discussion or clarification required? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll move to item 11.3. Development variance permit DBP 21005 to reduce parking requirements and vary required setbacks of zoning bylaw number 454.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. DVP 21-005 is to reduce parking area paving requirements and property line setback requirements for the Little Green Nuggets retail store at 108 Main Street. With regards to the requested variances to setbacks, the building was originally built with a 0 meter front setback and a 2.1 meter interior side setback on the north side to avoid building within the BC Hydro right-of-way that exists on the property. An awning structure was also added this year. The setback variances are requested to legitimize the existing structure as well as the addition. Work has been undertaken by the applicants to improve the facade of the building, and since the increase in the encroachment does not include interior space and adds to the form and character favorably, the variance does not represent a significant enough increase in the nonconformity to cause any concern. Zoning bylaw 2018 number 454 states that off-street parking and commercial loading areas must be surfaced with asphalt, concrete, or permeable drivable surface such as, but not limited to, porous pavers, cobblestone, turf blocks, and honeycomb grid. And that's in section 48I and 49F of the bylaw. The bylaw also requires the installation of an oil water separator in the parking and commercial loading areas, section 48J and 49H. The applicants are proposing to keep the existing gravel parking lot instead. Although gravel is not usually considered an appropriate permeable drivable surface in the interpretation of the bylaw, gravel is both permeable and drivable, as well as representing a significant cost to the applicants. Paving the parking area may have negative environmental impacts in terms of materials mined and greenhouse gases released. However, other acceptable options do not match the same concern, such as the turf block or porous pavers. Conversely, gravel crush can cause dust, mud, and other debris to be tracked off the property and onto municipal roads. Further, any variance to section 48I or 49F will not relieve the owners to hard surface pathway from any accessible parking stalls suitable for wheelchairs, crutches, and other mobility assistance apparatus, as this is a requirement of the BC Building Code. As the property is existing and has received a favorable facade improvement, which increases the streetscape appeal of the northern industrial area, and the surfacing of the parking area is not required to facilitate fire truck access due to the building's proximity to the municipal road, staff recommends that DDP 21-005 be approved. And Mr. Mayor, it is appropriate at this time that the floor should be open to any member of the public who would like to speak in support or opposition to this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak in support or against this permit? Hearing none. Are there any queries, questions, comments by council? Yes, Councilor Leach.
So I'm thinking long-term, as we just finished our OCP, right? And we know we have the brewery coming in, and we know we have development happening or new building happening at the commercial property across the street on Moran Place. And I've heard in the public significantly that that end of town needs to be cleaned up. And then again tonight we talked about the cell tower and how it was proposed to potentially be an eyesore. And our staff have made a leeway to try and minimize that impact. So if it comes to this recommendation, I do not have a problem with the awning, the oil water separator. It is a small business, I am okay with that. What I have a bit of an issue with is the parking. I confirmed with Mr. Taylor today that the accessible parking does need to be paved, and I would like to see council consider that the rest of the parking be paved to make the downtown improvements to that area of town. the reason from our or from Mr. Taylor and from the report that staff had recommended that the gravel was okay is because it is low density.
It would be a Part 9 building instead of a Part 3 building. Part 9 building is under the same part of the code as the house.
Okay. And then with the other improvements coming to the area, because they are a Part 3,
higher density.
or higher density buildings, those will be required to be paved. And I think that when those come to council, there will be issue if we allow this particular business in the same neighborhood not to pave, and they will have to pave the parking spots. And the flip side of that is, you know, we don't get any of them to pave it, and then really are we improving the area, especially if with the brewery attracting, you know, potentially new people to town, new business owners, tourism. I would just really like to think long term on this. I'd like to hear what council has to say.
Would that be a proposal for an amendment?
Well, there's nothing on the floor at this time, so
Okay.
something.
So we can
could-
talk to it.
Yeah.
Any other discussion by Councillor Weed?
Yes, I think I brought it up at the last council meeting about the accessibility factor here in town, as far as sidewalks, roads, anybody on a wheelchair, a scooter, whatever. And I think we're on the right track with our OCP as to making our Main Street look desirable, welcoming, all of these things over the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years. And I would really like to set not necessarily the precedent, but I really think that was why I voted down the cell tower, was I just really think we need to make all of Main Street appealing, even though it's an industrial area down there, or it's zoned industrial. I don't think it has to look shabby. So I would be in agreement with paving, or even these green, I should have asked that if they need to be mowed. The green pavers or whatever,
Yes,
like
actually,
I just think like something that's appealing to the eye and to visitors and.
And, Mr. Mayor, if I may, there are other things that aren't concrete or asphalt that are permitted, such as the pavers. They do require a little more maintenance.
Right.
They do require irrigation, and they do require to be mowed from time to time. But the only option isn't just asphalt.
Right.
Anything else? Councillor Hopple?
Through the mayor, I am on the opposite side. I feel that this is an industrial section of town, and I think that if we continue to make things so hard for people to open businesses and start up businesses, they just won't. I can't imagine. I know how much it is to pave my driveway. I could not imagine how much it would be to pave that brewery or to pave, call it the Mary Jane shop, but it's, you know, the Little Nugget. Like, that's a huge parking lot and very costly. So I think that if we want to continue to have business, start up in Lillooet and maintain it, then I think that we need to make some adjustments and make some revisions. It's not actually downtown. It might be on Main Street, but it's not downtown. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? So from my perspective, I mean, it's time. I'm really buoyed when I see 622 Main Street come with a first-class proposal. That tells me that we've got to look at the whole area. So I'm very much in favor of beefing up everywhere that we have, whether it's pavers, whether it's park, whether it's asphalt or the like. I think it's time. And it has to be considered in part of the development or permitting process. And this is the way we want to deal with it, or we don't. So it's a council decision. Councillor Leach.
So that being said, I would like to put a motion on the table, to have the parking lot paved, to still waive the requirement to install an oil separator in the parking lot, to reduce the, to leave the rest of the resolution as read, but just change the first point to it being paved.
That would just be, just scratching out the first point, not making it part of the resolution at that point.
Councillor Hoffel.
Can we make that 2 resolutions then? If we're splitting it, can we make it 2?
It doesn't, this is just a staff recommendation. If Councillor Leach is going to put a motion on the floor, then it's just going to be for the parts of the DDP that council's considering approving.
But if I am kind of
No, go ahead.
if,
You're looking to put your motion on the floor then.
well, I'm looking to approve things and disagree with the paving part, so how would I do that? I would have to go against the whole thing.
If there's a
Motion, and it's tabled,
Yeah.
then we vote on it, and people vote for or against it, right?
If there's a seconder, then you can move an amendment to the motion.
Okay.
To amend the motion to put that back in. Council will vote on whether to put your amendment forward. If that fails, then we go back to the original motion, which is this without that section. So that's your opportunity to kind of put that back in.
Well,
Clear-
that's clear as
clear
mud.
as mud.
Good heaven, what?
Clear as mud. Look, okay, let me get it tabled, and then Mr. Taylor, we can help you through, and you can
Tell me when to
do it
put up
on-
my hand. Because, okay.
You know where this is going anyway.
I do.
Okay, so from what I can gather, we will look to move that we waive the requirement to install an oil water separator in the parking and loading areas as prescribed in section 48J and 49H of zoning bylaw 218, number 454, and reduce the minimum front setback from 4.5 meters to 0 meters in the industrial I zone as prescribed in section 5131 of zoning bylaw 218, number 454, and reduce the minimum interior setback from 4.5 meters to 2 meters in the industrial zone as prescribed in section 5131 of zoning bylaw 218, number 454, for the property located at 108 Main Street, legally described as Lot 5 Plan KAP 8111, District Lot 1116, Land District 27, be approved. Moved by Councillor Leach, second by Councillor Weeb. It's on the table. Would you like to make an amendment?
Propose an amendment.
Propose an amendment.
Propose an amendment. I would like to propose that these,
You add the vary the requirement to surface. Would that be suffice?
Yes, it would
Where I'm
be.
hearing you're going, Councillor Apple, is if your amendment is you want to insert that first paragraph back in.
I do wanna insert that first paragraph back in, but I want to separate it though. How can I vote for, I want to vote in support of this, but against
So
the amendment.
the part you want to support
Yes,
is already on the table.
okay,
You are you're proposing an amendment to add the top bit back in.
okay,
Then everyone is going to vote on that top
That,
bit.
okay.
So if that fails, it is the same as doing this now and then making another motion to do it later. It's just we can't do it later because once a motion has been voted on, you can't beat a dead horse and
Right.
bring it back again. So for procedural fairness in Robert's rules, this is the appropriate way to go through that and consider this. Now that you've proposed the amendment, council needs to vote on whether to accept the amendment. If that succeeds, then you vote on the entire motion as amended. If it fails, then you vote on the original motion, which did not include the variance to the surfacing.
Okay.
Okay, so work with me here. So then your amendment to this motion that's on the table is
To bring back.
to vary the requirement to surface the parking and loading areas with asphalt, concrete, or permeable drivable surface as prescribed in section 48I and 49F of zoning bylaw 218, number 454, to gravel crush or other similar material. Moved by Councillor Hoffel. Second. I'll second that. Now, we're gonna call the question. All those in favor
Of the amendment.
of the amendment? Those opposed? Okay, it's defeated. Does that automatically,
No, now you must vote on the original
Okay.
motion.
do I have to cite the original motion all over again?
The original motion is already on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion on the original motion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? And those opposed? Carried. Thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, we'll move to 11.4. Associate member liability insurance for consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one of those items that we have to touch base on every year, as we currently have a consultant acting as the the contractor acting as the approving officer for the district. That's Mr. Ian McIntosh. And we do need to add him onto our Municipal Insurance Association of BC liability insurance as an associate member. We have done this since 2019. And the cost for that is only $2,000 to add him on there for the entire year. Any claims made against the district have a deductible of $5,000, and then everything else is generally covered by NIBC at that point. So staff are recommending that Ian McIntosh, approving officer, be added as an associate member to the District of Lillooet's liability insurance policy with the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia for the term of his consulting agreement being January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022, or until such time as the agreement is terminated. Thank you.
Any questions, clarification from council? No, hearing none. Somebody move that Ian McIntosh, approving officer, be added as an associate member to the District of Lillooet's liability insurance policy with the Municipal Insurance Association of British Columbia for the term of his consulting agreement being January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022, or until such time as the agreement is terminated. Councillor Weed, second. Councillor Hoffel. Further comments, questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Go to 11.5, Northern Development Initiative Trust 2022 Business Facade Improvement Program.
Thank you for approving that last item. I will now sign his contract, send it to us this weekend. So for this one, NDIT's facade improvement program, it's been a rocky road for the last couple of years funding this program. And staff were honestly questioning whether or not it was worth it to actually continue on as we had been doing. Funds had been carried forward once before because the program simply couldn't run. We attempted to work with the chamber a couple of years ago, and then the world fell apart. And so staff were left doing that on their own pretty much. This year we did attempt to do it. It has been successful overall, but also very challenging, not just for the district staff, but also for the businesses and the relationship between the district and businesses. I mentioned this in the report, that, and we confirmed this with regional districts and municipalities, that running this program from a local government is problematic because we're both the giver of the grant funding and trying to be supportive, while then, on the other hand, also being a regulator of the works that we're granting them funds to do. So it creates confusion for the business owners, like, are you our friend or our foe? And it's tough on staff then as well, is wearing these two hats often at the same time. Fortunately, the Chamber of Commerce here in town has recently done a huge rejuvenation of themselves, and I encourage all businesses to join in if you haven't already. And they've excitedly offered to take this program on next year, and in discussions with NDIT, the program director for this program is very excited about that. They find that the program works best when it runs through the Chamber of Commerce. So they do the heavy work, the heavy lifting, they do the relations with the businesses, and then the district simply does the final checks to make sure all the requirements are met for the program, because ultimately the district would be on the hook if somebody were granted the funds and it was actually incorrect. The district would be liable for that funding and NDIT would reimburse us, right? So we're not actually giving the money up front, they are on the hook. But this is a great opportunity for the businesses themselves and for the Chamber of Commerce to promote these businesses improving their storefronts, to hopefully match the beautiful plans that are being presented tonight. So staff do recommend that we go ahead and apply for this next year for the rest.
Any questions, queries from council? Councilor Leach.
Yeah, I just think that it's a really, really great program and not enough businesses take advantage of it. I sit on this RAC committee and I see all the different communities and how many applications they have year after year, and Lillooet has very few in comparison. So I would really like to see our businesses take advantage of this, and so hopefully the chamber taking this on, the application rate will increase.
Any other queries, comments, council? Hearing none, I need someone to move that the District of Lillooet apply to the Northern Development Initiative Trust for a grant of up to $20,000 for the 2022 Business Facade Improvement Program from the Caribou-Chilcotin Lillooet region. Councillor Weeb, second Councillor Hopeful. Any further discussion? None, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Mr. Deniger. All right, move to item 12.1, here comes the mouthful again. A bylaw to amend the bylaw, notice enforcement bylaw.
Good evening. Before you today is a staff report respecting a proposed amendment to the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw. We have a recommended resolution here that this amendment be read a first and second time as well as a third time. In terms of what you have before you is essentially a replacement of Schedule 15, which is the zoning penalties. And the reason for the proposed amendment is part of a larger initiative to revisit and revise our bylaws and ensure they're consistent and clear. It's also part of an initiative to modernize our bylaws, and in the course of staff operations, they utilize the bylaws, and occasionally it comes to our attention that there's some rephrasing that needs to happen in those bylaws. So by way of just examples, in the staff report, you can see that some rephrasing in terms of revising text from home occupation infraction, which might not be entirely clear, to a more specific unauthorized use or occupation of land, building, or structure. There is also the example provided. We want to make sure the language is consistent across the bylaws. So if a compliance agreement is not something appropriate for that particular infraction, rather than using the term not applicable, we're going to consistently use the word no, for example. So unless there's any questions or concerns, which I'm happy to address, this is basically an update to one schedule of many in the bylaw notice enforcement.
Okay. Any questions, queries from Councillor Weeb? I figured you'd want to do that.
I don't know why you're laughing. I'm just wondering if by changing the wording, this will make the enforcement stronger or the collection of penalties stronger. I just I hate going home and looking at all those wrecked cars and vehicles, and it's, yeah, beyond. So I'm like, will this make a difference in enforcement or in collection of penalties?
Thank you for the question through the mayor. The writing of the description, as noted in the penalties schedules, is kind of a interesting exercise because you want to be short and concise because the bylaw officer needs to cite the section on the bylaw infraction, but you want it to be clear for the public, so there's a bit of a balancing act. I can say that in revisiting this schedule, as was prompted by an error identified while folks were in the field, that there were additional infractions within the zoning bylaw that were not necessarily itemized. So this is an expanded schedule, making it clear that there are infractions in the zoning bylaw that were not previously identified as such. So I would, in answer to your question, through the mayor, I would say that the proposed amendment actually provides for previously unidentified infractions, or they were identified in a broader way, and this itemizes them more particularly, which I think aids both the public in knowing what is not compliant. So it serves an education piece, which is always the goal of bylaw enforcement, to achieve compliance through education. Is there any additional?
Yep. Anything else from council? Thank you, Ms. G. I'll require somebody that bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 2021-002 amendment bylaw 2021-025 be introduced and read a first and second time. Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Leach. Any further discussion on that motion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Somebody please move that the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 2021-002 amendment bylaw 2021-025 be read a third time. Councillor Weeb, second Councillor Hoffel. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. And thank you. Thank you. Gee. We'll move to item 12.2, Thompson Nicola Intercommunity Business License Bylaw number 2021-024.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the October 5th, 2021 regular council meeting, council did receive a staff report that outlined the nature of the Thompson Nicola Intercommunity Business License Program and gave first 3 readings to the ICBL bylaw number 2021-024. Notice that the intention to adopt the ICBL bylaw was published in 2 consecutive issues of the newspaper on August 20th and October 27th of this year. The notice included the invitation for persons who consider they are affected by the bylaw to make representations to council in writing or at the regular council meeting of November 2nd, 2021. Notice of this type is required for business licensing bylaws pursuant to section 59 of the Community Charter. Created in partnership with local governments, the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, the Province of British Columbia, ICBL partnerships streamline and simplify the licensing process, making it easier to do business in participating communities. Intercommunity business licenses allow mobile businesses to operate across participating government jurisdictions without having to apply for multiple business licenses. Staff are recommending that the intercommunity business license number 2021-024 be adopted. Mr. Mayor, at this time it would be appropriate to invite any member of the public who feels that their interests are affected by the adoption of this bylaw to speak before council consideration. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to this proposed bylaw?
Question.
Yes.
Is the CRD, Caribou Regional District included in this? Or only Thompson Nicola?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 6 local governments within the Thompson Nicola Intercommunity Business License Program, and that is the District of Barrier, the Village of Chase, the City of Kamloops, the District of Logan Lake, the City of Merritt, and the Tk'emlúps. There are other municipalities such as Ashcroft, Cache Creek, Clearwater, Clinton, and obviously at this point Lytton, who are not members of it, but it is restricted to the Thompson-Nicola intercommunity business license pod, if you will, and they're kind of done by a regional district, although there is a little bit of overlap. But the Caribou Regional District does not have any represented municipalities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any further? Yeah, Councillor Weeb?
Just thought that I would bring this up. When this first came on the table at the last council meeting, I believe it was Councillor Leach asked me to take it to the SLRD to see if regional districts do this on their own. And the answer is, community charter provides municipalities the authority to regulate businesses through a business licensing structure. The Local Government Act does not provide regional districts a similarly business licensing authority. Should a regional district want to be able to establish such a bylaw, it is possible and involves undertaking a lengthy legislative application process for this to be granted through provincial regulation. At this time, the SLRD, like most RDs, has not pursued such approval. I hope that's a satisfactory answer. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Yes. Councillor Leach.
I just have a question for staff. In the advertising of this, did you have any businesses come to ask about it or seem interested in it?
No, we didn't receive any feedback.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Okay, somebody please move that the intercommunity business license bylaw number 2021-024 be adopted. Councillor Weeb, second Councillor Hoffel. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 13.1, work in progress. Nice detail. Any questions or comments from council? Keep it up. Good. Thank you. Will somebody please move that the work in progress as of October 27, 2021 be received for information? Councillor Hoffman, second Councillor Leach. Any further comment, discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. The mayor has nothing to report. Councillor Hoffman, please.
Okay, other than our regular, board committee of the whole, permissive tax, regular council meeting, basically what I've been working on in the last month is, the forest restoration with regards to the BC, forest fires over this last summer. So I've talked to Jackie Taggart and, I've also, had a meeting with Brad Vick, and he holds a seat in the House of Commons. So his idea was that he totally backs and supports that we need to change BC and the way it handles the forest fires, situation and for long term with future mudslides and trickle effects. So anyways, he said that if I create a petition and have 35 or more signatures on it, then he can actually bring it up at the House of Commons and speak to it. So I've talked to Mr. Denegar, and I also had a meeting with Fire Chief Darren Oiki, who are going to assist me in writing a letter that I'm hoping that council will endorse to go to our provincial government and to create a petition, get those at least 35 signatures, and so that Brad can take it to the House of Commons and speak to it. Hopefully we can create the change that we need to protect the rest of our forests in BC from future fire demolition. Thank you,
That's it?
yes.
Thank you,
Oh.
Councillor Hopwood.
Can I just ask a question?
Yep, Councillor Leach.
Since it is that time of the year, in conjunction with all of this work, will you be writing a SILGA resolution that we can bring to SILGA next spring? Or?
Well, I just hadn't thought about that, so I will think about it, yeah,
Alright,
so
'cause
I will, yeah,
I
good,
would-
yeah,
I would
thank
support
you.
that for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Leach, please.
Alright, yeah, again, besides all of our regular meetings, Laura Simoto and her team and architect Louis, on the East Lillet Memorial Project were up last week, last week, and they got most of the basic structures in, for the new, let's say, water-friendly rock garden,
Memorial Garden.
Japanese Western-inspired garden, to bring up that, solve some of the problems that we were having with it. So all of the basic structures, they've hand-laid pavers, with gravel, they had, I think it was GNS contracting in, moving big boulders, lots of planning. And so everything is in place except for some basic, small planting, and details, including they're actually gonna have, blue, I'm not sure if it's blue glass stone or just blue stone that's going to mimic water, because water is very important in Japanese culture. And there will be, so once that happens in the springtime, there will be a grand opening and hopefully it'll be a really nice kickoff to a successful tourism season post-pandemic, fingers crossed. And I just wanted to mention it was all volunteer work that from their team, and there was volunteers from the Lower Mainland, Kelowna, Kamloops, and our fire chief Darren Wicki was out there for a few days doing a lot of grunt work. It was really nice to see.
So was his father.
And his father, yes, his father came over to do it too. So it was awesome to see, and there's been a lot of hard work and planning on it. So take a drive out. So if you don't know where the Memorial Garden is, it's just above Airport Gardens on, it's Highway 12. Say Highway 12 towards going out of town. It's beautiful. It's phenomenal. So I'm really, really proud of the team. That's all I've got today.
Good, thank you. Councillor Weeb?
I always feel like you save the best for last and I go on and on. On October 6th, I attended a SOGA meeting via Zoom. I'm so zoomed out, it's scary. There was a discussion on regional air service and it mainly concerning the Okanagan, that like opening up the national carriers, like, so there was some letter writing and some lobbying that went on for an open skies policy, just to make it easier for people to get to Vancouver or to Toronto, that you could, they still had the Kelowna airport closed. So I believe that's opening in November due to lots of letter writing. And they did do some letter writing as well, Councillor Hopful, in regards to the forest fires and what worked and what didn't work, more what didn't work. There was a presentation by Kofi, and there's been a 35% reduction in allowable cuts this year. So between mill closures and job loss, you're looking at 100,000 direct and indirect job losses that people don't even realize when the forestry industry isn't doing what the forestry industry is to do. On October 7th, I was in Cache Creek for our first in-person Gold Country meeting, and we were to do our strategic plan, and I'm sure our staff will understand they had electronic issues, so what we ended up doing was having lunch and a very welcome chit chat where all the ladies and gentlemen kind of went above and beyond, obviously from loneliness and loss of speaking to people. On October 18th, we had a special meeting of the SLRD, And seeing as our boardroom is not equipped to broadcast from, we are back on Zoom meetings so that the public can be involved. Thrilling. On October 20th, I tuned into our Silga series speaker, who was Christina Benti, and learned more things, and I'm glad we have members of the public here to hear this. So she is, I would love to have her here at budget time. I wish she was just free. So it's basically about infrastructure and all the things that people don't realize that are under your streets, and, you know, old pipes that are 50 to 80 years old, just various different things, your potholes, we all complain about them, but it all costs money. And it was suggested to mention to people that some of the things that the district and the town and your cities and whatnot have to do are legislated by the province. So we don't have a choice in spending our money over there. That has to be done. And the other question for constituents are, what are you prepared to live without? We all know what we want to live with, but in order to fix, let's say, sewer pipes on Russell Street, something has to give. So it was like, we need a plan as to where we want to be and how we're going to get there. And like I say, if you ever get a chance to tune in to listen to this lady, she used to be a mayor in Golden, and she has taken up, I swear, an infrastructure placard. She is just phenomenal in the way she speaks about, you know, the things that you don't see that are considered infrastructure. So, hopefully we can come up with a plan. On October 26th, I attended the public hearing for the OCP, and I am proud to announce that the SLRD thought that our work towards truth and reconciliation and dealing with our neighbors was really, really strong in our OCP, and they were very, very impressed. So thank you, staff, for making us all look good. On October 27th and 28th, back on Zoom with the SLRD, and I will honestly say it was the longest day of my life on the 27th because everything that we did, we had 3 different delegations, and it was all revolving around the regional growth strategy of Metro Vancouver. Great, they're doing wonderful. Transport 2050, the TransLink up the corridor and down to Vancouver. So, and then we had a discussion on the BC Hydro PILT policy, which we are going to hopefully bring forward and have it rewritten much so that Area A, Area B, Lillooet get the same usages of their PILT fund as Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton, so that will be really, really good. And a delegation for BC Hydro. But I find it really hard to sit through some of those SLRD meetings because we seem to be at, I know that someday we'll have transit, but we won't have even a bus going from here to Pemberton until they get this TransLink thing up through Whistler into Pemberton, and it's just really, yeah, it's sad, but that's where we are. We're at the tail end of the dog. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Weed. Item 17.1, the CAO report.
I do not have a report for today.
Thank you, Mr. Deniger. We'll move to item 19.1. This meeting is now open to questions from the media and the public. Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Councillor and staff. Thank you for your time. I know it's been a long day. For the record, my name is Paquin, P-A-Q-U-I-N, first name Jeff. My wife and I purchased a property down on 150 McHugh a year and a half ago. Beautiful piece of property along the river, with the vision that we were going to retire and build a beautiful home there. I did submit a comment sheet to Brian Gregg, who is the consultant for the proponent for the telecom communication tower, outlining our concerns with respect to whether or not the research analysis was in fact taken in terms of best use for that particular location in light of the official community plan. And I recognize that this is an industrial zoned area, however, it's also surrounded by residential. And we talked about the shortage of future development in residential communities, and we were considering a fair amount of money investing into a residential development. And now we have to give it some serious thought, and I think, and I submit respectfully that council reconsider the motion to pass and think about the third option, and give this some longer term consideration in terms of that impact to the official community plan and the development around the area in terms of residential development, because I can tell you anecdotally, it's something of an eyesore, and we don't want to invest in that situation, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way when you look at residential development in that area, and therefore, I do humbly respect what you're saying, and that you passed a motion, but I would request and submit to you that you rescind that motion and look at your third option and give this further consideration in terms of what it could mean in terms of dovetailing or not dovetailing with the official community plan, and give some further input to that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wu. Understand what you're saying. I abhor cutting people off, but procedurally, obviously, in the middle of a meeting, we're not able to take input from the public. But I guess hindsight's 20/20. In theory, what you should consider is the public input in the beginning, as you would have had an opportunity to address us, the council, before that item even came on. So again, I don't like cutting people off, but it's a procedural thing. And thank you for sharing your concerns with council.
Sure. And just further to the record, I did submit that comment and
Right.
copy Kevin Taylor.
That's right.
I did not get a response back locally, but I did get a boilerplate response back from the proponent
Right.
themselves. And further, well, you've heard my
Yeah.
thoughts.
Right, thank you. Any other questions from the public?
Point of clarification, Your Worship. This tower wouldn't be 5G technology?
It wasn't indicated, whether or not it would be
No.
5G or not, just that it was a tower to supply cell service. I will mention that there is already 5G, in Lillooet, being transmitted from the tower across the west.
Thank you.
We can only assume, but officially we don't know. We can't say.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
I couldn't see whether the motion was passed or denied about paving. What was the answer on that?
Sorry?
Do I need to pave? Or not? I couldn't see.
Mr. Mayor, I will, speak
Yeah,
to
you
the
can clarify
member
that,
at the
please.
end of the meeting. I will speak to the member at the end of the meeting.
Okay. Will that suffice, ma'am?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? There, hearing none, we'll move to a closed meeting. I need someone to move that the meeting of the District of Lillooet Council be closed to the public pursuant to Community Charter Provisions, Section 91C, Labor Relations, Other Employee Relations, Section 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land of improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. Somebody please move. Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Weed. Call the question, those in favor? Thank you. We'll have a short recess, and thank you all for coming, very much appreciated.